Rajuji has been a crusader, a fighter, and he has been battling for Bharatiyas, for Bharat, for decades now. And I call him a Dharma Yodha. His seminal works and writings that have appeared, published in the past, have stirred the conscience of the knowledgeable people, well-meaning people of this country and elsewhere. Repeatedly, Breaking India book was referred here, Being Different, Indranet, non-translatables, Snake in the Ganga. All these are fantastic seminal writings by Rajiv ji, and some of them co-authored by Vijaya ji. They have opened a new world of understanding and analysis of the intellectual space, particularly of our country. इसके बारे में see, not that we don't want things to come from other parts of the world. We have been very open to the ideas as a civilization. The Rig Veda's famous quotation is there, Ano Bhadra Kato Yantu Vishwataha. We want all sorts of, all truths to come to us. Ano Bhadra. Whether that is coming is Bhadra or not, that is the whole question. But what is being now pushed into the education, sometime through certain policies, sometime, that is the United Nations, UNESCO, other bodies which I mentioned, and or SDG like things, or sometime through back doors, or sometime, as our friend said, through media. So these are the things which should worry us.
सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै ओम शांति शांति शांति.
Namaskar and a very good afternoon to all of you. It's a great pleasure to welcome Shri Rajiv Malhotra and Dr. Vijaya Vishwanathan to the VIF today. We are gathered here today to release the book and have a book discussion. They have written, their latest book is Who is Raising Your Children? Breaking India with Youth Warriors. So that is the subject matter of our discussion. So welcome, sir, both of you. We are also most grateful to our chief guest, Shri Dattatreya Hosabale ji, the General Secretary of Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh. He doesn't need any detailed introduction. I think all of you know very well. He's a leading public figure. He's one of the leading thinkers and strategists in the country and in the organization. He was arrested during the emergency years of 75-77 in his childhood. So he's been with the organization for a very long time. And he also served as the General Secretary of ABVP for 15 long years. And he was the founding editor of Asima, a Kannada and English monthly. He speaks several languages, and he has been here with us on some earlier occasions. Sir, thank you very much for being with us today. Rajiv Malhotra is also doesn't need any elaborate introduction. He has been coming to the VIF for a number of years, has been an author of several books. In September 22, we had discussed his widely acclaimed book, Snakes in the Ganga, Breaking India 2.0. So he has been picking up this theme of breaking India for several years, even I think many years ago also. Breaking 1.0 also you had written. And I think some of the issues that he has followed and the early warnings that he had given, they are now for everyone to see. He has raised his flag against wokeism, which grew in the US, originated in the US, but also infiltrated many of Indian institutions. And I think the last book was about that, 800-page book. And he's followed this theme in this current book. The book has just come and we'll be releasing it shortly. I've not had the chance to read it because this came this morning. But from what the jacket says, I think it's very serious that we have to be worried about what we are teaching our children and how these influences are coming. We'll hear more about this. Shri Malhotra is the founder of the non-profit Infinity Foundation, which is dedicated to researching civilization and social sciences and mind sciences perspectives. His co-author, Dr. Vijaya Vishwanathan, holds an MBA degree from Wharton Business School and has had a successful career in manufacturing and finance in the US, Singapore, and Europe. And her core area of work is education. She has studied Vedanta, Dharmic, and civilizational thought, and she serves on the board of the Infinity Foundation. As I said, the book we are going to hear from the authors themselves. This is a book which has been published in India by Ocam Publishers, and it is essentially a critique of the Indian educational system, which is being followed in Indian schools. And the authors posit that the National Education Policy 2020 tends to follow the ideological agenda recommended by organizations such as United Nations, rather than address India's needs. It recommends a national education policy rooted in Vedic civilization, including the teaching of Indian classics and the Indian knowledge systems. Only this way, the authors suggest that India will be able to reclaim its historic role as a Vishwaguru. And I think even a cursory reading of a few pages of the book shows it actually raises some very uncomfortable questions for policymakers, parents, and the Indian society in general. So we are looking forward to hearing from the authors about the book. So we'll follow this program now. Now we'll release the book, and I'll request the chief guest, Shri Dattatreya ji, to kindly release the book.
Namaste, and thank you to the VIF for inviting me for this launch, and also to Dattaji, a great friend and somebody who's inspired us a lot over the years. I have to tell you that the first Breaking India book was launched in this room by Ajit Doval. He was the person who launched it, and Guru Murthy was also there. So our relationship goes back even many years prior to that. So I have a lot of good memories in this hall. the work that I've been doing for 35 years now has certain paradigms and frameworks that we have developed. And one of them is the Breaking India paradigm, of which this is part 3. Now, each paradigm consists of a top-down and a bottom-up view. Bottom-up is examples, data, evidence, without which you cannot prove your case. Like in physics, using my physics background, you have experimental physics, which comes up with a lot of data. And then there is theoretical physics, which is top-down, which builds a theory about something. And the theory has to explain the data and be consistent with the data. The two can't be incompatible. If a new data is found which does not fit the theory, then the theory has to be replaced. So this is how the theory and the data, the top-down and the bottom-up, work together. So like this, we've developed several frameworks, several theories over these past 3-4 decades. One of them is the Breaking India framework. The first BI1, Breaking India 1, was the book launched here, which was about how global forces are co-opting Indian forces, Indian Jati, Dravidian, North Indian, that kind of divides, fault lines, and whether it's conversion, whether it's Maoism in the villages, what is happening. It's a big book, at that time considered very controversial, so controversial that the first publisher refused to publish because he said this will create trouble. But then it became a bestseller, and now everybody says, of course, this is happening. So that was about the problem being created in the poor segments of India in the villages. Then a few years ago, we launched Snakes in the Ganga, which we called Breaking India 2.0. That is not about problems being created with poor people, uneducated people in the villages, but with the rich elites in Harvard and Ashoka University and various people, places like that, and in corporate India. So now this Breaking India 2.0 is not bottom of the pyramid, so to speak, of Indian society, but the top elites. These are the leaders of tomorrow. So they are being influenced. How they are being influenced? What is the role of these Ivy Leagues in the United States to build these theories and put these theories into the business framework, legal framework, and the higher education in India. So that was Breaking India 2.0. This book, latest one we are launching today, is called Who is Raising Your Children? And this is about the same kind of forces, but now attacking the school system, education system, young children, same motives to break Indian society. And in this case, the agenda, and this is not just India, by the way, these are global forces doing it everywhere. The problem is not the India problem, the problem is who are these people, why are they doing it, what's their agenda? And they are global forces everywhere. So the motive being to disconnect the youth from their heritage, from their families, over-sexualizing them. Vijaya will give a lot of examples. I'll give you the top-down view. She'll give you the view with a lot of examples. The idea that education is meant to prepare you for jobs. You ought to learn, science, math, reading, writing. That is not being given priority, but more about what are your pronouns and the whole issue of identity politics entering the schools at a very young age, as if they have to solve these problems at an age where they're not really prepared and they're not ready to be able to do all this. So this is that kind of a framework. The nature of this book is similar to, like, if somebody in defense were to say that this is the weapons that the enemy is making, it's more like a caution saying, okay, now what are we going to do about it? It's proactive. It's to kind of give you an advance warning. So in that sense, what we are talking about are very heavy weapons being used to attack educational systems at a very young age. That's, in a sense, what we are talking about. And the role of UNESCO, the role of World Economic Forum in these kind of things, the role of Planned Parenthood, which comes as a nice sounding thing, but inside there are other agendas. The World Health Organization. Now you might know this few days ago, a week ago, Trump said the US is withdrawing from WHO. Now you might say, why? WHO is for health, health is good. But the real reason is that under the pretext of health, they're also doing some mischief all over the world. So it's not just our problem, it is also Trump's problem, and we're very happy that he's attacking the problem, because now it's easy for me to say all these things. In fact, before I came here, I was invited by the Trump transition team and the inauguration team to be part of a 4-day event in Washington during the swearing-in ceremony. Even though I'm not registered to vote for, I didn't vote for, for them and all that. I told them up front, I'm not a member of your political party, but they wanted to discuss my work, our work in criticizing and critiquing woke, because they want to dismantle woke in the United States. That is a very strong part of their policy. What you read about Trump is the foreign policy part, that how they are putting different kind of tariffs and things of that sort. That is one part of their agenda. But equally powerful, maybe more powerful, within is the domestic agenda. And the core of the domestic agenda is to dismantle this woke and the diversity, equity, inclusion, and this whole trans movement, and this whole movement where identity politics is taking precedence over merit. Now the DEI is being accused. It used to be the very heroic thing. Every CEO, all the corporate people running around trying to prove that I have more DEI. Bonuses were contingent on your DEI performance. How many people you hire of a certain quota, that would determine your bonus and your ratings, your corporate ratings. It's all now going the exact other way. So we can say that we have been on the right side, at least as far as US trends are concerned, because we've talked about these things for a very long time. The global players that we discuss who are promoting this childhood education system include United Nations, both UNESCO and World Health Organization. There is, to some extent, this thing is coming through UNESCO as education, to some extent it's coming through health. The health ministries around the world are being weaponized to promote sexual rights as fundamental rights of a child from the age 0. So even very young children, they have certain fundamental rights, including the right to sexual pleasure. And this is being weaponized, and the curriculum is being filled with these sort of things, to the extent that parents don't have right to override this. Parents can't say, well, this is contrary to my culture, and because this is contrary to my culture, I want to raise them according to my culture. What they are being told is that this is the fundamental legal right of this child from the moment they're born, and the parent has to make sure the child's rights are protected, and if the parent doesn't, the parent can be prosecuted and the child can be taken away, which happening also. In this book, we are giving an example of an Indian family in Utah that faced this situation. They had a fight with the school system that certain values being taught are contrary to their values, and the legal system got activated, and they felt that they might lose their child to the state, taken away from them. So they packed their bags and came to India. This is a whole case, and there are many cases like this. So it's not just who is raising your children, it's also who owns your children. I mean, do you really own your children in that sense? Because you cannot raise them the way you choose to raise them. The state has the authority to raise them according to the state's standards and so on. So besides that, the US tech oligarchs, all these Zuckerberg and all these kind of people, Amazon and Google, and they all played the woke card for a long time, until Trump came to power. They all played this card of being, I got banned many times, During COVID, we had interviews with people talking about Ayurvedic solutions to COVID. In one interview where they said, we don't believe in this vaccine, we have other ways, we got 2 million views in 24 hours. And I got a notice from YouTube that this violates community standards. Now we wanted to know whose community, who made the standards. There's no answer like that. So we had to stop it. Otherwise, they said, we'll block your account. So a lot of this went on. A lot of this kind of stuff went on. And not only the media became woke, and now they've flipped the other side. Now all of those same people, Zuckerberg gave, officially it was 25 million, but he probably spent many times that, during the Trump inauguration to show that he's a supporter. So he and his team were all over Washington when I was there, being very pro-Trump, because they want to show that, we don't want to be attacked. But they have the fact is that they were aligned with the woke administration, the very extreme left previous administration, pursuing certain policies. And now they want to change course. So that force has been involved in bringing about these kind of issues, these problems. And then there are some global NGOs like Planned Parenthood and many other international NGOs that we described in great detail that have displayed this particular agenda. Now, having mentioned who are the players and a kind of general idea of what is breaking India, I want to go to the next level. What exactly are their ideologies and what exactly do they want? You see, the word development is a fantastic word. I mean, everybody wants to have development. Poor countries need development. We had developing countries, all of that. So that was the original agenda of the United Nations, development. But then another agenda started when people said that this development is burning too much coal and too much fossil fuel. And if the poor countries also start having the same level of manufacturing and industrialization and cars and all that, then it'll be a climate problem. So there was this fight between developed countries and developing countries, India leading the developing countries, because we said we need all this. We have to develop. Our development shouldn't be stopped. You are the guys who've polluted and you are the guys who've created climate change. We shouldn't be penalized for it. So there was a tension between sustainability and development. If you have too much sustainability, then the poor countries can't develop. If you have too much development, then there won't be sustainability. So they came up with something called sustainable development, UN. They came up with mandates called sustainable development. That's also fine. It's a good, nothing wrong with that. But that soon thereafter, Marxists who had always been, hovering around and getting involved in these international institutes, they saw the opportunity and they brought in social justice as part of sustainability. Social justice means human rights. Human rights means caste politics, all that kind of stuff that you are very familiar with in India. So this is how sustainable development introduced goals like all sorts of human rights goals, and then these amnesty people, all these people come and they give ratings and evaluate who's got democracy, who doesn't, and who's violating what rights. So this became part of the United Nations Charter. So the UN now has something called SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals 2030. And Sustainable Development Goals 2030, there's 17 of these goals. And within these 17 goals is almost 200 real objectives. The benchmarks measurable. All the countries have signed up for achieving these goals by 2030. In the SDGs, SDG 4 and SDG 6 in particular have to do with education. That's our topic here. That under the banner of Sustainable Development Goals, now it is sort of like international mandate, and everybody's part of it, that you have to bring about these changes in education. Now, the education language use is very clever. It talks about things like social emotional learning. And you say, I want my child to have social skills, emotional skills, why not? It's good. But it's not very clear what exactly, whose agenda, whose framework will be used, whose pedagogy will be used for this. And when you look at whose is being used, that is anti-Indian culture. That is what we are talking about in this book. The idea of gratification rather than self-discipline. The idea that, if there is a certain type of gender or sexuality behavior which is present in 1% of the population, then for the sake of that 1%, we have to change everybody else, the other 99%. And we have to promote that 1% to the other 99% and even try to make them join that. So things like kids are told, you want to be boy or a girl, you have to choose. You have choice. And so they're told touching private parts, these sort of things. So this way, it is not just respecting the rights of the 1% who are different, but also imposing that upon the other 99%. So all this is going on under social emotional learning. And then there is comprehensive sexualizing education, CSE, which is part of the United Nations mandate. So Vijay will go into some examples of what they are teaching there. And these curriculums have come from foreign countries, they've made there. And then UNESCO franchises this, Planned Parenthood and bunch of other NGOs franchise it in all the countries. Then they try to find people in the local country to co-opt and latch on to this curriculum and market it and spread it domestically through the internal mechanisms of the government. They're doing this all over the world. So this is not unique to India, and this is not originated in India. That is the problem. It is not as if we've taken Vedic ideas of diversity or Vedic ideas of sexual education or Vedic ideas of social emotional learning or any Indian ideas and try to make education out of it. That would not be a problem. It is that these are un-Indian and they're foreign, and they've come from a different civilizational matrix being brought into India in a very forceful way. So, and the United Nations flag is behind it. So it's something important to look at. Now, while the comprehensive sexualizing education is kind of affecting the children at a very young age and diverting the energy away from mathematics and reading and writing, those kind of skills are going down, and these other kind of things are being brought in to evaluate them. While that is going on, there is another part of United Nations which I think is even more serious, and this is something called global citizenship education. Now, even that sounds very nice. Wow, a global citizen to sabko hona chahiye. We want to be global citizens. Why not? But the idea of global citizenship, the values that consist of global citizenship, is being defined very clearly by globalists, not Indian people. These are not Vedic ideas of, it is not that this is some kind of our theory of Akhand Bharat and globalizing and whatnot. So the global education idea says, global citizenship education says that things that are defined as being a good global citizen is what every child should be taught. So whatever is global problem, if solving LGBTQ is a global problem as they have put on their list, then every child is supposed to face it as if it is his job. He is facing this burden now. This poor kid at a young age is so fragile. There's not anything he can do. It just confuses them. So climate is a child's problem. Social justice is a child's problem. And these people are not mature enough and old enough to make a contribution, and it destroys their emotions. And it also disrupts them from family unity. There is a whole movement that the wrong civilization has to be toppled, and this wrong civilization, this abusive, oppressive civilization, is being transmitted from generation to generation through families. So families have to be broken. This is a very clearly written part of the agenda of this whole movement, that family shouldn't have too much unlimited rights. A family, you raise your children, you give them birth and so on, that's great. But how you raise them has to be consistent with these global citizenship standards. So this now China is very clever. We've done a comparison with China. China is teaching global citizenship according to its own criteria. So they're teaching that Belt and Road Initiative is something you children should go and propagate to the world, that is being a global citizen. So global citizen means basically Chinese ideology, political thought to be globalized, spread out, and that is the focus of global citizenship in China. And there's a whole research papers on Chinese curriculum in this area. They don't have words like social justice. They don't have those kind of concepts, and there is no paper, no topic like that. They feel that is not the UN's business. None of UN's business. China will raise its children its own way, however they want to. So their role model of a global citizen is somebody who's very patriotic, very nationalistic, very chauvinistic towards the Chinese point of view and the Chinese global agendas, international relations agendas. He's been trained and he's going to spread them wherever he goes. So that is global citizenship. So that's their, when you look at it, it makes sense from their point of view. Now, the methods used are very interesting set of methods being used. There are three government departments in every country that they are entering from. There is the education system, there is the public health system, and there is the legal system. I've already mentioned about the first two. The role of the legal system entry, and I'm addressing some Delhi University legal professors on 10th, and also some lawyers, legal association. They've invited me to talk about this. So the legal entry is through changing the laws on sexuality, making promiscuity okay before marriage, raising the age of marriage, and lowering the age of consent. And there are also movements all over the world to normalize pedophilia, pornography. And so this sort of thing, this is quite dangerous stuff, if it's allowed to continue and enter. So then there are indices. We know there's this ESG index, which is the environment, societal, and governance. All the corporates everywhere in the world are measured, and your ability to get international funding and your ratings, whether investments should be made in your company or not, whether it is Coca-Cola or whether it is Reliance, that is how it is measured by the ESG index. And who evaluates the ESG index? ESG index is evaluated by, Arthur Andersen, Ernst Young, people like McKinsey, Booz Allen. They are the guys who come and evaluate what your index is. They firstly make money evaluating your index, and then they tell you that we can actually provide a service to improve your index. We will help you, we'll be consultants and fix your problem. First we'll tell you your problem, then we'll fix it. So this is a whole racket. And this, when you apply these indices to school systems, to education systems, then this whole business that we were talking about becomes a factor. They will look at your curriculum, your policies to help grade you and rate you. So peer groups are being weaponized. So the peer group strategy is that children learn from each other better than they learn from adults and parents. So you recruit some children who are very sort of ultra-liberal, progressive type people who believe in all this latest fashion, latest fad, latest American thought that's come in. You make them leaders, you even pay them, and they are the sort of mentors, and you create apps. There are apps that have been created in the West that are being marketed everywhere. You convince the local state government in some country, you convince the local authorities in education that this app is good for the child's social emotional learning, and this app is like a consultant, like a advisor. And these, with things like AI, these are going to become even more powerful. So the app is almost like a companion giving you advice. And besides the AI driving the app as your consultant, advisor, friend, whatever, there are peers who've been selected to be the human involvement, the human being involvement. And so the child is being raised this way. That's what's raising the child as far as their emotional upbringing is concerned. So the child inputs all their, who they are, whatever, all the system looks at what their likes, dislikes, profile. AI is very good at picking up, a pattern of behavior and nuance accordingly. Even the cartoons that AI can manufacture can be customized for a particular child. So this particular child will like this kind of cartoon in this particular language and so on. So this use of technology and use of peer groups is a method that is extremely popular. And then parents are excluded because when the child has this confidential gateway through this technology, parents don't know what's going on. And the laws are being made that parents do not have the right to intervene if the child crosses a certain line, because this is the child's rights to do so. So this has happened mainly in Europe, then it comes to United States, and then it gets multiplied many times to spread all over the world. Now, the right to education in India gives other groups a bit of an advantage over Hindus, because some of the laws are such that the others are exempt from policies. So this is also a factor one has to consider. One of the important chapters in this book is our response from a Vedic point of view. So we have a 50-page or so chapter on Vedic philosophy of education. What is the Vedic philosophy of education? What is the nature of the child, the nature of the human being? Who are we educating? What is the purusharth, the goals in life? What is somebody supposed to do in different ashrams, different stages in life? And according to our philosophy, what should the education system do in all these categories? We are addressing the category of diversity, but from a Vedic point of view. We're addressing the category of sexuality from a Vedic point of view, or LGBTQ from a Vedic point of view. We have similar issues that have been addressed by our own system. But the approach is not desired gratification from childhood onwards. It's not that. It's quite different. So we are, and the health consequences. What do our health systems say about these things? And the whole social sciences, which are now Western social sciences being taught everywhere, especially every English-speaking country is mainly teaching Western social sciences. What would be Vedic social sciences? So we are addressing these kind of response. We're not just critical, but also giving response and giving some suggestions. And finally, to conclude where I started, the Trump administration is actually just started in the first week or 10 days. They've already done a lot to dismantle many of these problems. So it remains to be seen what will be the global implication of Trump coming in as far as these old educational systems are concerned. Will other countries like India switch and say, okay, we want to be on the side of the Trump theory, which is anti-DEI, anti-trans, all that, or not? I mean, that's a choice for the policymakers, not for me. But I think that's the kind of discussion that educators will be having everywhere in the world. Thank you very much for listening. I'm glad.
Thank you. I request Vijayaji to kindly say a few words.
It was very interesting that today in the news, the Trump government essentially said that the USAID is a front for the CIA. And the press secretary essentially listed out a large number of projects that the Trump government has been funding. In Peru, they've been funding a comic on LGBTQ, for example. In Colombia, they've been funding some other project for popularizing transgenderism. They, in fact, have a project in the Ukraine to create social unrest. And essentially, they said the job of the US aid is not to drop bags of rice or wheat where there's famine, but essentially there is censorship, advocacy, and they run a large disinformation campaign in different countries, and to overthrow governments that they don't see as favorable. They also fund something called democracy assistance programs in various countries to overthrow different governments. Now, if you look at what the US aid has done for India, is also pretty alarming. We've named them in the Snakes in the Ganga and in this book as well. I'll just give you a few examples. They fund a social emotional learning startup for social emotional education of youngsters. They fund an NGO called Dasra, which teaches to spread comprehensive sexuality education. They also fund Care India and Kriya University to do research on these various Breaking India sort of subjects. They fund Breaking India 1.0 areas as well. They fund, for example, the Dalit Solidarity Forum and other NGOs like that. Now, Rajiv ji talked about some of the new education subjects that are coming in. So obviously it means one has to ask if there are 4 topics coming into the K-12 education, like global citizenship education, environmental education, social emotional learning, and comprehensive sexuality education, what gives, right? So obviously numeracy and literacy, you should look at that because something has to give, and that's probably what's taking the beating. Now, let's talk about comprehensive sexuality education. You should understand that comprehensive sexuality education has nothing to do with sex education. We are for sex education. The sex education that we think personally that works is to teach young people about sexually transmitted diseases, sexual violence, sexual abuse, sexual hygiene, and how to prevent pregnancies and how to avoid abortions, things like that. But what makes sex ed comprehensive, according to these global organizations, is something entirely different. So on one side, they want a sex positive education, which again sounds right. I mean, who doesn't want sexuality to be positive? I, as a mother of 2 boys, I want them to view sexuality as a positive thing. But sex positivity means engaging in sexual activity through whatever means, without any regard for the risks, because the risks can be mitigated. For example, although they talk about abortions while they're selling it, they're talking about preventing abortions or having safe abortions. They talk about, but the programs themselves pay very little attention to abortions. They say, they don't say don't engage in sexual activity because you'll get pregnant, but and then you'll have to have an abortion because you're young. Instead, they say there are ways to prevent. There are different sexual acts that you can engage in, which are equally or more pleasurable than just straightforward intercourse, which will make you pregnant. So this is sort of the approach, a desire-based sexual education program, and this doesn't start at in the teenage years. It starts at 10 right now, but in Europe, where they're at the cutting edge of this whole comprehensive sexuality education, it starts at age 0. In fact, I was so troubled to see some WHO videos from the Netherlands, where they bring toddlers, 3-year-old, and I'm not making it up, 3-year-old toddlers, and the counselor tells the toddler, why, when you touch there, do you feel pleasure? How often do you feel like touching? I mean, this is the kind of brainwashing that happens to 3-year-olds, and I'm not making it up. So masturbation is a huge topic in this. They teach young children that you should masturbate frequently and enjoy yourself as you enjoy other bodies. Then there is this whole idea of of gender confusion, which is a social engineering project that is prevalent in the US schools. That's one of the reasons why Trump got elected, because the mothers of America stood up and said, no more, enough of this. We are all tolerant people, but don't push your luck. So the textbooks in America, there are library books in America which show explicit sexual acts. So when the mothers go to the school board and say, are these, and they show up the pictures with explicit detail on sexual acts, which are which are reading material for 10, 11, 12-year-olds, and different kinds of positions, different kinds of sexual acts, and they show the public, the TV is not allowed to share that because its obscenity laws bars them from, airing such detail. So that it's pornography essentially, but in the name of education. See, the laws essentially, if there is explicit material for research or for education, the laws allow it. So using that loophole in the law, they have brought in these books on pornography and have distributed it into the library system. The American Library Association is also corrupt. So they have Marxist, chairman and head in the leadership, and they promote these books in the school library, the public school libraries. So the American mothers have gotten together and are fighting these kinds of educational programs tooth and nail. In fact, research also shows that comprehensive sexuality education has not produced any of the results. I think 90% of the studies show that it does nothing of delaying sexual activity or abstaining from sex. It doesn't do any of the things that it promises, because the promise of comprehensive sexuality education, or CSE, is all kinds of things that you would want your children to have. But it actually shows that none of that is true overwhelmingly, and 20 or 25% in 20 or 25% of the cases, it actually has negative effects. So on one side, comprehensive sexuality education is about pleasure seeking, teaching children to go ahead and pursue their pleasure, like I said. The other side is to give them sexual rights and make them activists, and trying to tell them that you're a sexual being and you should fight for your sexual right, and trying to make sexual rights human rights, fundamental human rights. And we'll just come to that. The third component to this is gender confusion. So you have, right from kindergarten, you have something called the drag queen story hour, very prevalent in the US in all libraries in America, and it's also come to India. There are many in Delhi. In fact, you have some NGOs that are promoting this in schools, in private schools. And essentially the idea is you have a man dressed as a woman and with prosthetic breasts, and drag queen essentially used to be entertainment, adult entertainment for gay men in gay pubs and gay clubs, and it's an adult form of an entertainment. But this is brought to kindergartners, and they call them drag queens artists, and there's nothing artistic about this whole performance. It's a lot of glitter and bling, and little children are attracted to anything that shines and a lot of bling, so they perform, and they have prosthetic breasts, they wear skimpy clothes, they have sexually suggestive names like Monsoon Lush or Little Miss Hot Mess, names like that. So obviously sexually suggestive. And they read a storybook on how to be inclusive to LGBTQ community. So that's on the other side. On the social emotional learning side, we have a UNESCO, even right here in Delhi, you have the Mahatma Gandhi Institute of Peace and Sustainability, which is a Category 1 UNESCO institute. And what you find there is that's a center for social emotional learning. Now, social emotional learning has its roots. Rajiv ji's come up with this whole theory of digestion of Indian ideas into the West and sold back. So like yoga was taken from here, repackaged and sold back, you have social emotional learning now coming internationally. It's being sold as the cure-all for everything. If the child is depressed, you need SEL. If you're not doing well in math, you need SEL. If you want to be a global citizen, you need SEL. So SEL is sort of the elixir. It solves all kinds of problems. That's how it's sold. Now, it does have a few good things. Like all Marxist programs, there are a few good things, and initially it might seem good. There's meditation, and maybe somebody will chant Om and all of that, and parents might get impressed. But the devil is always in the details. And so their own literature says the following. They say you take two contradicting SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals. So, for example, a child might value his nation, sovereignty, and national borders. All of that might be taught that. And then there is a migrant crisis, and you're taught to be compassionate, to a neighboring migrant, right, who's just come into the country illegally. So think of a 6-year-old who's been told that these are your borders and this is your nation and you should be proud of it and everybody should follow the law, and that's the lesson. And on the other side, so SDG would be, they're very pro-migrant. That's the problem that, again, Trump had with the border there. We also have in India the Rohingya migrant issue. On the Kashmir side, we have all kinds of infiltration. So you can think about a child being given these two scenarios. So the idea is you take two conflicting SDGs and you teach it to the child, and the child is then confused. And it's they say you create cognitive dissonance. Not my word, it's their words. So you purposely create cognitive dissonance in a child mentally, and they become stressed. And they don't know what to do about it. And so that stress manifests as guilt or fear or anger. And that is why you see Greta Thunberg and these young people, how dare you, and they're just so angry all the time, and they're fighting for climate change, things like that. So you make them highly anxious and get these emotions into them. Now you use social emotional learning, which uses behavioral science, psychology, and neuroscience. So the latest in all of this. And then you rewire young people's brains. So even in traditional Indian gurukulams, you have the whole idea of Sangha. You always hear about the right Sangha, like Rajivji talked about peer education. So Sangha is very important. You talk about putting in samskaras at an early age so that your orientation in life is good. Your mental orientation, your emotional stability is guaranteed when you put good samskaras. So these are the same ideas that they take. And they rewire very successfully little children's brains. Now, the very troubling part about all this is they're continuously monitoring the child with data. So before a math question, they see how what kind of signals you give. After the math question, they ask you to fill out a survey. So there's constant surveying from kindergarten to 12th grade. And that is why companies like Meta and other big, large companies like Samsung, all of them are funding SEL programs because they want your data. And they will tell you, we will de-identify data. So we'll remove the name and all that, but we'll still get the data. But it's very easy to re-identify data. The child's entire mental map and emotional map is being chalked out. And these are very dangerous things, considering the privacy issues that as they get into adulthood, they could have. You could easily control them. You can nudge their behaviors. You could sell certain things to them. You can deny them certain services. If you think a child is eating too much junk food in their survey, somehow you can say that your insurance, we won't be able to insure you. You could do all these things. This is how and Rajiv's written a book on AI, which talks about all of this. So that is social emotional learning. Now, even social emotional learning in the US, some of the states had mandated social emotional learning, and they have found that there are many large studies and meta-studies which show that it actually doesn't do anything, doesn't have any positive outcome. In fact, the MGIEP, Mahatma Gandhi Institute, the UNESCO's institute itself says they haven't quite validated their assumptions of their program. But every day there are millions of teachers and students getting certified in social emotional learning. So with these two big programs, it's really, really hard to to circumvent these, because these are all global institutions and with very deep pockets and clout that are taking our child. But I want to end in a sort of a positive note. Not all is lost. In the last part of the book, we talk about how in the early 1700s, the British have abandoned a lot of young boys, children, in Madras, and there is a Madras male asylum, which was in Egmont. It was a fortification for the British. They had fought the French, and they took this building up, and they called it the Madras Male Asylum. And they housed all these destitute boys in this asylum. The British soldiers, their fathers had left, abandoning the mothers and the children. The teenagers were very unruly, wild, not into education. And the British felt that, okay, it's their children after all, and they had to do something. So they hired this priest, this Anglican priest called Andrew Bell, who was a tutor. And he had his little stints in America, the colonial Virginia. He had gone to tutor some private families, rich families, and he came back to Scotland. So the British said, okay, you go to India and take care of this Madras male asylum and do something and teach these kids something, teach them the Bible, do something so that at least their character is built. So Andrew Bell comes to Egmont in Madras, and in the mid 1700s, and then he starts looking at this asylum. He has a few assistants. The children are unruly. They can't study anything. They don't have attention. They're badly behaved, badly spoken, and they're not taking into the Bible study too well. And he's extremely puzzled. He wants to do something. So he takes his walks every day on the beach, and then he stumbles on a Malabar school. So he sees a lot of these Thinnai schools, outside the veranda there are people teaching children. And so once he stumbles on a Malabar school, and he just starts observing. And he sees how children are writing on sand, alphabets on the sand. And then there are other bigger children teaching these little children how to write on the sand, and they'll erase and rewrite. And it's such a calm environment. And there are 15, 20 kids, and there's just one teacher who's hardly paying attention, but all the children are teaching one another and are behaving, and he starts observing it. So he rushes back home and he says, Eureka, I think I've found it. So he comes up with this very detailed study. He spends 10 years in Madras, and he studies this entire system of Indian education. He sees one village schoolmaster with 200 children, and all of them are educated. In fact, in 1700s, the German missionaries who come and who say that, wow, India is the only one which has over 90% literacy, whereas Europe is struggling. Only the very rich and the very elite could afford education. So he studies this whole thing for 10 years. And the long and short of it was, he discovers that the system of Indian education is that you had one teacher, and then you had monitors or other students who would learn and then who would teach. So who would learn from the guru and then would teach the children who do not know, and then that system would go on. Each one would. So every student had the opportunity to learn and teach, and the learning also was very easy for them because they learned from a peer, and teaching reinforced these ideas. And the guru's job was essentially to make sure, make spot quizzes and make sure everybody is going at their own pace, but improving and developing their academic skills. So this is like it's just casual thing, if you go to any gurukulam, of course, what's the big deal? There's no rocket science. But Bell writes that this is the steam engine of education. He says this discovery is, so he calls it, of course, the Madras monitorial system, and gives no credit to the Malabar schools or the Indian pedagogy of education. And he says this is bigger than the steam engine, because now we could really educate everybody, the masses of Europe. Yeah. And of course, the story goes on where there's another guy, Joseph Lancaster, who steals Bell's idea. And Bell and Lancaster, this is the second digestion. He steals it from Bell, and he doesn't give him credit. So to establish something, Lancaster goes to America because that's the new world. And he establishes the Lancaster School of Education there with the same monitorial system. New York is, the whole of New York is educated just like that within a few years, and the whole of America begins to get educated. So just content of Indian knowledge system has just not, attributed to the Enlightenment, but even our pedagogies and our methods of education. Yeah? So that is the richness of our tradition. Bell's been honored with a monument in Westminster Abbey. This is where Bell and his Madras monitorial system. So that's how big this system was. Now, we do have, we have many people, many villagers, we have millions of people who want to get educated, who are aspirational. And we could use these systems, revive these systems. And we also talk about a particular gurukulam in Chhattisgarh, where I sent my own boys to spend a year, and they spend more than that also, their vacations there, run by this octogenarian. She's an 83-year-old scholar. Pushpa Dikshit Mataji is her name. It's a gurukulam for Vyakaranam in Sanskrit. So only Vyakaranam is taught. It's both sexes are there. They teach both male and female students from all over, starting from the age of 5. There are kids from Vrindavan, and there are professors who come from China, Heidelberg, and the US to learn from Mataji. So it's a mixed age group, and you will see this so-called Madras monitorial system in action over there. Right? Because you have one 82-year-old teaching 50 people from various backgrounds. And they study, traditionally the Siddhanta Kaumudi would take 10 years to study to get some kind of a grasp of Siddhanta Kaumudi. With Mataji's methods, you can study Panini within a year and have a fairly decent grasp of Vyakaranam. So these are there still, and people don't know about it. These are the hidden gems in India today, not in mainstream urban areas, but you do find many gurukulams. We can still revive this kind of education, and hopefully, we can bring back Indic knowledge systems and be the producers of knowledge, as opposed to always being recipients of some second-hand Western pedagogy and model. Thank you.
Chief Justice Chandrachud, 5-judge bench has passed a judgment on sexual autonomy. What you have, and our Hindu laws, which are made post 1947, are destroying our families already. How this book can be helpful to that?
I'll take one or two from some youngsters who are here. Yes. Yeah, come to you.
I'm Steve Rajpurohit. Sir, you focused on the mainstream education, the formal education system, but there is today, especially among the youngsters, an informal source of education, that is movies and web series. I recently wrote an article on a Netflix web series called Mismatch, and those movies are spreading this ideology too. So we need to even focus on that things, sir. That would be my suggestion.
Thank you. There's a young boy there.
Good evening, everyone. Namaskar, Rajiv sir. I feel very proud to be standing in front of you and sharing this. The first question that comes to mind after I listen to you every time is, why is the government letting these people in? The Western frameworks, the funding and everything. And but I'll switch to a question that is more representative of people like me. I come from an IIM background, have worked for over 17 years in the ed sector. But right now I'm working with one of the organizations that is very close to what you call snakes in the Ganges. And for me, I want to know from you, what can I do? I believe in the ideology that India should stand for and what we all should do. But why are we supplying human resource in dearth of any real possibility for a person like me? And there are thousands like me in the last decade. I think this developmental sector has grown so much that even IIM graduates are getting into this, and they are amplifying the Western framework that we should actually be working against. Okay. So please lend direction to this.
Yeah. My name is Abhishek. I teach at University of Delhi. Congratulations, Rajiv ji and Vishwa ji, for the book. My only concern is that do you really believe that Indian educators are aware of this much of issue and challenge that is creeping all around? I mean, because you might have done the detailed survey. So are they aware really of that?
Okay.
Thank you.
Rajiv ji?
Yes, 4 questions. Law, media, the gentleman there, what can the average person do, and whether the system is aware of it. So you see, law, we are addressing that there are 3 dimensions to it. One is the education system, one is the health system, the other is the legal system. So yes, what you are saying is absolutely correct. These things have entered through the legal system. I don't want to be critical of anybody, but some of the Chief Justice have their pedigree from Harvard and things like that. We've talked about it previously, and therefore it is not unexpected that they might be promoting those things. Regarding the media, you're absolutely right. These kind of ideas are not only coming through the official, all over the world, by the way. It's not only coming through the official education system, but informally also. And we mentioned that there are also apps. They are specially being designed and developed and promoted through the school systems of various governments all over the world. They think that this app is socially, emotionally supporting the child, teaching him things. But the app has got a certain indoctrination. The app is an AI app with a certain ideological tilt, which is not, from our point of view, conducive for our culture, our civilization. So I agree with that. What can individuals do? Well, you see, individuals need to self-organize, and if we are invited by a group that is organized, we can conduct a seminar, we can do all kind of things. So it is not practical for someone like us sitting elsewhere to organize individuals. They have to come together and organize, and if we invited, we would love to do something. The final question there was, what was that about?
The system is aware.
The education system. Yeah, now that is another level of discussion. We don't want to critique or evaluate the education system here, but you should. That's a project, wonderful project worth doing. We would love to participate. Vijay, you also.
As far as law is concerned, it's actually going to get worse before it gets better. For example, the UN has something called the International Committee of Jurists. Along with the UN AIDS office, they've come up with this document, policy framework called the 8 March Principles. What it does, this 8 March Principles, is redefines human rights and criminality, and it while it does not explicitly decriminalize pedophilia, it leaves leaves open the age below which sexual activity with a minor would be criminal. So essentially, what you're trying to do is the international organizations or the world standards for law, essentially trying to say sexual right is a fundamental birthright, human right on one side. And then on the second side, they're trying to bring down consent and all of that. And they're trying to say that, for example, the pedophiles will say that there's a new term used by scholars to call pedophiles. They're called minor attracted person because they really... even the UN echoes the same sentiment, because the UN says, I quote, criminal liability may not be based on thoughts, intentions, beliefs, or status alone. So this is where it's heading. And so on the legal side, you're going to get age of marriage going up. You're going to get age of sexual consent going down or totally vanishing. You're going to get abortions and things like that available freely without much difficulty. And you're going to get comprehensive sexuality education to, go about their business. As far as media is concerned, I spoke about USAID. In fact, if you go and look at some of the funding of USAID, which I forgot to mention, they fund the American embassy here also with the USAID, funds influencers, radio influencers. They give them, or to talk about LGBTQ issues to young people. So if you follow the money trail, you'll pretty much find out who's behind all these, who's funding these shows, who's funding these efforts. And invariably, it'll be some big, and of course, invariably, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation will be involved, the Planned Parenthood will be involved. HCL is involved in India. The Tata's Population Foundation of India is involved. So these are our own philanthropists are also involved.
So thank you. I think we had a good discussion. Now I request Dattatreya Hosabale to kindly make his remarks.
Shri Dr. Arvind Gupta ji, director of this Vivekananda International Foundation, who is presiding over the session, and my long time elderly friend and guide, Shri Rajiv Malhotra ji, Sister Vijaya ji, elders who are here, sisters and brothers. Are you listening? Yes. I am not asking, are you hearing? Because Rajiv Malhotra ji has been shouting and shouting, but who is listening? Both Rajiv ji and Vijay ji, they have come out with another book after Snakes in the Ganges. I had the opportunity in Delhi to participate in the launching of that book also in the same capacity as I am doing it today. That was in a different hall some time back. In the introduction itself about Rajiv ji and Vijay ji, Dr. Arvind Gupta has mentioned many things. Rajiv ji has been a crusader, a fighter, and he has been battling for Bharatiyas, for Bharat, for decades now. And I call him a Dharma Yodha. His seminal works and writings that have appeared, published in the past, have stirred the conscience of the knowledgeable people, well-meaning people of this country and elsewhere. Repeatedly, Breaking India book was referred here, Being Different, Indranet, Non-Translatables, Snake in the Ganga. All these are fantastic seminal writings by Rajiv ji, and some of them co-authored by Vijaya ji. They have opened a new world of understanding and analysis of the intellectual space, particularly of our country. Rajiv ji lives in US, but his soul is here, body is there. And he understands the world from both the angles. From the Western angle, he studies. And also, as we all know, he is deeply rooted in the Indian traditional knowledge system, the Vedic roots. Over the years, he has tried to put forth those ideas in the modern context. I think he is one of the first persons to bring the idea of this Purva Paksha and Uttara Paksha in English writings. See, in Bharat, in the Bharatiya languages, I should speak that way in Hindi here. तो भारत में, भारत के जो भाषाओं में भारतीय परंपराओं के बारे में जो आता है वो इंग्लिश स्पीकिंग वर्ड को समझ में नहीं आता, क्योंकि भारत के चिंतन जो है, द इंडियन माइंड, द इंडियन system of understanding, as just now Vijayji was mentioning about the experiment that is going on in Chhattisgarh. And there are scores of such places in Bharat even today. वो समझ में नहीं आता, क्योंकि हम उससे कट ऑफ हो गए हैं बहुत पहले. To that extent, Macaulay has been successful, who aimed to form a class of Indians, as we all know, that's a famous sentence of Macaulay, Indians in blood and color, but English in taste, in opinions, in morals and in intellect. तो इसलिए मैकाले को आनंद ही हो रहा होगा wherever he is. Even after 75 years of independence, we are struggling to have a real Indian system of education. Not that we have not tried. Soon after independence, as we all know, commissions have been appointed. Mudaliar Commission, Radhakrishna Commission, and one of the famous commissions was Dr. Kothari's commission. Elaborate, comprehensive thinking was done by Dadat Singh Kothari in 1964. But after 25 years or 20 years or so, we come out, the government of India comes out with a report, Challenge of Education, that why we have not been able to implement that. Excuses are given. तो मैं इसलिए कह रहा हूँ, भारत में स्वतंत्र भारत के शिक्षा प्रणाली कैसे होनी चाहिए, इसके बारे में चिंतन होने पर भी उसको इम्प्लीमेंट करना संभव नहीं हो पाया. क्यों? And now we are with a new education policy, and when I see in this hall, there are some very important persons who have been involved in framing and implementing that education policy. I hope the new education policy will be successful in its implementation and in forestalling the threats that have been discussed just now by these two authors and what has been told in the book. इसके बारे में, see, not that we don't want things to come from other parts of the world. We have been very open to the ideas as a civilization. The Rigveda's famous quotation is there, Ano Badra Kato Yantu Vishwataha. We want all sorts of, all truths to come to us. Ano Bhadra. Whether that is coming is Bhadra or not, that is the whole question. If the things that are entering into our homes, into our schools, into the minds of our new generation, if they are not Bhadra, healthy, comprehensive, value-based, civilizationally acceptable, culturally robust. If that is not these, if it is not having these qualities and components, then it is not Bhadra. That's why we say, Ano Bhadra Kratavo Yanto Vishwata. Let the noble thoughts come to it. It should be noble. But what is being now pushed into the education, sometime through certain policies, sometime, that is the United Nations, UNESCO, other bodies which I mentioned, and or SDG-like things, or sometimes through back doors, or sometimes, as our friend said, through media. So these are the things which should worry us. Of course, I have not read the book, but I have gone through the introduction of the book 2 days back when Vijayaji sent it to me. What is good and beneficial should be accepted, no doubt. But all that is pleasant need not be good. Swami Chidbhavananda used to say, all that is pleasant need not be good. So many a time the things that appear to be good, maybe having the package is good, but the content is dangerous. Wordings are very high sounding. Terms are very attractive. Sometimes even logic is very persuading. But ultimate result is really destroying the culture, the civilizational values. That's why this is the warning bell that this book has, what it is doing, it is a warning bell that this book has come at the apt time when we, the Indians, have to think about our education for the next 25 years. In the introduction, the authors have listed 10 paradoxes. I am sure you will all be reading the book. Just to give an idea, I will read the paradoxes 1 to 10. Marxist takeover of USA. This is the paradox. Though it is a capitalist country all this year and they have been fighting, how the Marxists have entered from the back doors and how they are taking over the cultural space, the educational space, that has been discussed. Billionaires helping dismantle capitalism and meritocracy. You make money through capitalist ideas, then you want to destroy the same thing. And in the name of DI, etc., which Rajivji has earlier also done, and Gates Foundations, Open Society Foundation of George Soros, and many other people also, that is Omidyar Network. All these people they are engaged in doing this. Leftists support Islamic practices that violates liberalism. There, how the leftists and Islamic forces have joined hands in pushing and pursuing certain things in the cultural and educational space that has been discussed by the authors. There is a sentence. When I read this sentence, something came to my mind that I am going to say it here. Rajivji writes here, one can debate whether the left is using the Muslims or the other way around. Some years ago, there was an idea of liberation theology. And I attended a workshop of the liberation theology things in Bangalore, outskirts of Bangalore, and the World Council of Churches organized certain things. After attending that workshop for 3 days, the same question came to my mind. One can debate whether left is using the church or church using the left. Because in particularly, the third world countries, the poor countries, the underdeveloped or developing countries, both church and Marxism are wonderful things for the people. The church wants to use the Marxist ideology, and the Marxists want to use the church network and the funding. So the liberation theology thing came out, piggybacking. So because both religion and poverty, they have been coexisting. So the Marxists found a wonderful field in African and Asian countries to peddle and push their liberation theology. So the leftists have found new funding masters and networks of Muslims. And the next paradox that the authors have listed is feminists silent on assault of womanhood. Deception and opaque jargon used to weaponize the youth for social justice. School children from age 5 becoming over-sexualized. Create interest, curiosity, control them, regulate them, and then destroy them. Their young age is destroyed, the childhood is destroyed. So this sort of, and in the name of education, it is being done. Terrible academic standards in India, and despite more government funding. This, I do not want to go on these things, because why these things are happening in spite of more budgetary allocation over the years, and the real issues many a time are being sidelined, and instead of creating people who can be employed, whose life can be a better life with cultural and civilizational wisdom and values of life, as just now Rajivji explained, LGBTQ and other things have become as if they are the most important global questions. And that will be taught in the classrooms. So we are not preparing the next generation for nation building, if this is going to happen. The wokeism, which has been in here, is now in operation through various means and avenues, and painting all cultures, nationalities, and civilizations in one color and putting them in one framework and trying to create a new global order. If this is the agenda of the wokists in the name of liberalism and other globalism, then it is time for us to wake up. And I think that is their agenda, and Rajivji and Vijayaji have already warned us through this book. About homogenization, I want to mention a particular thing that Samuel Huntington wrote in Foreign Affairs magazine years ago. The homogenization, he termed it as coco-colonization. It is a new colonization through coco-colonization. That is, because of the social media and other things which you have been just now mentioning, the whole world has to have one single type of entertainment. The whole world will have to taste the same beverage. The whole world will enjoy the same stories. It is against humanity. This uniforming of cultural aspects will destroy human civilizational varieties. And through education and media, if somebody is attempting for this, then it is time for us to wake up and stop it. The cultural uniqueness will be destroyed. It will be goodbye to the national identities. It will be the end of civilizational varieties and their contributions to the humanity. I may be saying very serious things. If you think so, once our new generation mind is filled with these things, then one generation is lost. The cultural continuity will be lost. So that is why this is a very serious thing now, which we all have to be aware of and see that these things are stalled at the right time. What the American president will do for his country is his job. What he will do with India, we have to see. But if he is stopping wokeism in his country, let us try to understand how they have been doing it and how they will be achieving success. We can learn a lesson. And in our own way, we have to build the firewalls. We are generally alert for the territorial borders, but our socio-cultural borders are porous now. We should be worried of the cultural borders, because territorial borders, geographical borders, the armies and defense forces will take care of. As citizens, we stand by them. But the cultural borders, if they are not guarded well, the cultural invasion that takes place will create havoc. So that there is attack, we have to be alert, and it is the responsibility. It is not the responsibility of only the government. It is not the responsibility of some university people only. It is the responsibility of the people of the kind that who are sitting here in this room, who are knowledgeable, who are thought leaders, who can create awareness among the people. Many a time, the ordinary people will be gullible. But if the knowledgeable people, if they are not doing their duty at the time, then the damage that is done will be irreversible. Rajiv ji was mentioning about one incident that one family returned to India. I met a family a month ago in Bangalore who have shifted back to Bangalore for the same reason. In the classroom, maybe 7th or 8th standard class. The boy was continuously being told by the teacher that now you should think that whether you are a girl. So first, for a week, he was just listening, then he started listening, then he became morose, then he became silent. And he talked to his mother. What is the matter? Then the mother came to know that not only that he has been asked to think like that, now you start going to the ladies' toilet. You think like that. Why this? What's happening? And if this is going to be there in our society, are we going to have a healthy family, a healthy nation, a healthy society? And that family said goodbye to American job, their career, and they returned to India and now settled in Bangalore. So friends, it is now the responsibility of people who can save this country. Maharshi Vyas, he told, Urdhva bahur viromyeshan na kaschit shrunoti me dharmadartascha kamascha sakimartham na sevyate. मैं दोनों हाथों को उठाकर बोल रहा हूँ, धर्म से ही सब होगा ऐसे, फिर भी क्यों नहीं सुन रहे लोग? तो वेद व्यास ने कहा था, दोनों हाथ खड़े करके मैं चिल्ला रहा हूँ. राजीव जी और विजया जी चारों हाथ खड़ा करके चिल्ला रहे हैं, सुनेंगे क्या? नमस्कार.
So friends, we bring this session to a close. A very, shall I say, I think we're ending on a somber note. We are ending on a somber note. But what Dattaji said, that it's no point blaming anybody else, but you have to take responsibility and stem this tide which is growing. On one hand, we have some families returning, which is a positive thing. But on the other hand, we also see long queues of students and others just 1 kilometer from here. And a lot of people are asking for appointments at the US Embassy because they want to go. So something is happening about which something has to be done also. So what is to be done is also mentioned here. But I think things are not happening. That is probably, as you said, 2 हाथ, आपके 6 हाथ हो गए यहाँ पे, मैं अपना भी 2 करा तो 8 हाथ. But who is listening? That is how you started. Now, but this book is an early warning. In fact, not so early warning because you've already done other books on the same theme. But from what was written in the Snakes in the Ganga, when you named the people, the organizations, and by name also, 800 pages. And I was wondering whether somebody would stand up. But interesting part is not one person mentioned in the book and came and said that, no, this is wrong. So I think people understand what is going on, but somehow there is this helplessness. You know, when the new education policy came, 2020, we did a lot of seminars here, a lot of vice chancellors and professors and students came. And there was this optimism at that point of time. But now it is almost 4 years. And again, this question of implementation has come in. And there is a lot of anguish that the new education policy is not being implemented. Either the resources are not there, or awareness is not there, or maybe it's not answering the basic questions. I don't know what is wrong, but this is a common refrain that you hear in the education system. So perhaps, as we were discussing in morning in some other context, sometimes this awareness has to be raised. Why is it that we don't have a special session of the parliament to discuss some of these global issues? Without taking side, but at least to discuss it, because these issues are not being discussed in the parliament, which is the most important body. And we are discussing it on social media instead. And social media, is not a platform for discussion. It's for mudslinging, and no serious discussion can ever take place. And I think one reason why we are unable to implement is that in this new Bharat, we don't have those tools and methodologies which the West has developed. They may have taken it from here, but they have put in resources in that. They have put a strategy into this. And they have all organized themselves properly. Even a small number of people their voice is getting amplified. But where are our Melinda Gates organizations, philanthropy, etc.? They could do the same thing. It's not such you can learn from their methodology and take it back, but that is not happening. Instead, a lot of time is going around in recriminations, mudslinging, and the level of discourse and debate and discourse is so low. And you can see what's happening in around every day. Now it's 6 o'clock. By 8 o'clock, you will see all the people will come in the arena and they'll start shouting at each other. So in the name of debate, it is really shouting that is happening today. It's only in a few places like this that some serious discussions take place. But I think all the speakers, I want to congratulate the authors for this wonderful book once again, which is a continuation of their earlier theme. And one good thing about this is not only the arguments are very well placed, but they're extremely well researched. And nobody can really challenge this. This is, I think, one very good thing about these books. And second is your persistence and continuity of which is also very useful. And Dattaji's, of course, your presence here is always a very blessing. And I think you have also raised these issues. And so in the end of it, there is a...
Before you conclude, I will say one thing.
Yeah, sure.
About the education, which he said, of course, that it can be discussed. I think sometimes UAF also can arrange a discussion how the implementation is going on. There are a lot of things are being done to stop such things. So only thing is many things cannot be published because of the final orders are not in the discussion is going on. And we need not be very thinking about these things because trends all over the world, many a time they come and go. We are having robust societal understanding also. That's where that is possible. But your the worry and that is well placed.
No, what I was saying was that these kind of concerns should be discussed first among the educationists, the vice chancellors. There are thousands of universities now here, colleges and so on. So all the people here sitting here are probably of the same view. So they will all very appreciate it. But I think those who are in charge of these and to whom this is directed, that's where this discussion really should be taking place. And I think you should sit with some of these people, including those who are funding these. Maybe they are doing it unknowingly. They are doing it because SDG, now you talk to any diplomat, every diplomat will say SDG 2030 goal, we swear by them. All of us swear by them and they say, ki, haan, acha hai. But now when you point out to the underlying philosophy, then you begin to understand ki kuch gadbad hai. So the whole diplomatic discourse then will have to be changed. Otherwise, in all our statements and speeches and so on, SDG is something that we always say that today, in fact, one of our arguments is that the SDGs have not been implemented. 15-20% is all that is the implementation. But as you said, face of it, they look very good. But then what is being done by some interested parties And I think the one point that they made, which is very, very relevant, and I think we should take this, is that there are answers to all these issues in our own Indian knowledge system. And those answers are not being, you see, who is against globalization? I mean, we have all been global. And, we have been exposed to the ideas and we have contributed to the ideas. Nobody is against the global thing. But who is deciding what should go in globalization and what should be globalized? So these are the points I think you have made. So this SDG thing is very interesting. I was also a little surprised when you said that SDG 30, etc. Because this is almost a cardinal principle. We all praise SDGs. But now you have pointed out what could be wrong with that. And also bringing in the health organization, WHO, etc. We criticized WHO because it has all gone in China's influence. But they are also doing something, and education and health are related. I think that's another very good point that has come out. So thank you very much. It's been wonderful listening to all of you. Let's give a hand to our